podcast, where three of the OKS youth ministers talk about youth ministry. I'm Michael Deese, and I'm joined by Hunter Puckett and Jeremy Crow. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good.
Would you say swell?
I would say peachy.
Oh.
Saying that we were on the cusp of a week at Maywood Christian Camp.
Real Tide.
We're doing as good as we can.
Yeah.
Finishing up lessons, making sure kids are in cabins. It's
Hey,
going great.
Let's get your favorite camp memory. Favorite camp memory.
Ooh. Hey,
I have a serious one and then not so serious one.
Okay.
I got to baptize one of my kids in the lake a couple years ago, or it might have been last year.
that's why we have pools.
Yeah, but that was the coolest thing, and I thought that was so neat.
It is.
And then
I think it was 2
was that
years
Logan?
ago.
Yeah, 2 years, Luke.
Luke.
And then one not so serious thing. There was one year that I came out of my cabin at like 2 a.m. because I heard somebody yelling, and Cade Presnell had his kids down by the lake running sprints up that hill because they weren't behaving.
That's awesome.
That's actually fantastic.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, now we have that rule of no capital punishment, so that's where that rule came from.
the director's son.
Yeah.
Wow.
He got in trouble.
Wow.
One of my least favorite things about camp is when I stay in Davis Lodge and you have to use the bathroom, there's no stall doors and there's just a curtain and it hangs in your lap because the stall's not big enough. So those of you that are in Tyre and Bethlehem, the most bougie
yeah.
posh camp cabins that there are at Maywood.
That's Michael.
Me and
remember
Sam.
me as I poo with a curtain hanging in my lap.
Are you going to be in one of those too?
No, I'm in the director's hut.
So who's going to be with it?
What in the world? This guy.
Noah Barnes, John Richards, and Colt Montgomery.
Unbelievable.
I know.
How did
Well,
you,
I
how
lost-
Did, how did you do
At the
this?
meeting, I said like 4 times, Chris, if you need to move me to the director's hut, I'm happy to do that.
And then he's like, "No, I work with Hunter."
Well, I lost my identity.
Nepotism.
No, I lost my identity when all my co-counselors decided not to come back.
Oh,
So I didn't want to find new
Dude got
co-counselors.
clapped.
Yeah.
No, Chris approached me about it. And originally I told him no, I wanted to be in the cabin. But then I was like, well, I said, if it helps you out, then I'm more than happy
What
to
a
help.
nice guy you are.
Man,
So
you're just a really great person.
Hey,
just trying to serve the kids. I'm excited to open
From
up
a
canteen every single
directorial
day.
role.
Okay, let me tell you
Wait,
my favorite. Okay. Yeah,
I want to tell you one more. Michael Deese's father, Robert Deese, is one of my favorite memories of camp that there is because he is the ultimate camp counselor. He no longer is a camp counselor. He doesn't come anymore. But there are so many kids that are in their current, like early 20s to mid 30s that would look to Robert as the premier counselor of their entire time at Maywood. That like they longed for, fought for to be in the cabin with Mr. Deese. There is no counselor that will waste their entire week away more playing basketball, swimming, and wrestling in the pool, playing ping pong, kickball, gaga ball, whatever was happening, anything at camp. Robert was right in the thick of it with those 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and just living it up, having a blast.
Yep.
And that's one of my favorite things to watch at camp over the years is these kids just be loved so much by how he would serve and care about them. And boys still that I talk to in their 20s reflect back on Mr. Deese being their counselor.
Well, and I think that's what camp's all about.
Yeah,
right.
It's about for us. It's different. We're not taking time off. This is our job. But he did take time off, and what everybody has to understand, and this
Yep.
is for any camp and any counselor, you are taking time off to go do this, but you're also volunteering your time to be spent with the kids.
Right.
Make sure you are giving your 100% to the kids, making sure that you're doing exactly what that is. Sit with them at the evening or at your evening devotionals that you have, whatever you might call that at your camp. Sit with them at that. Play with them during the free time. Just be with them. Show them that you are interested in their lives, and that's such a important thing.
Yeah, yeah. So here's my favorite camp memory.
Let's hear it.
It was when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I was in the catching crawdads and lizards stage.
Oh.
I know that stage well.
So there was some. All right, I'm about to get into some stuff that's really great. You know what anoles are, right?
I didn't know if you're going to say like that's really deep and like get emotional.
Yeah. Do you know what anoles are? Anybody? No.
Seminoles.
Seminole?
Okay.
Yeah.
And anole is those little green lizards, right? That you can go to
did
the
not
pet
know
store
that.
and buy them.
I just call them lizards.
Yeah, me too. But that's their. And then there's also like the skinks, right?
Yeah,
the
familiar.
What'd you call me?
blue tail skink,
Yeah.
orange tail skink. Yeah, okay. Well, those were normal. People were catching those, and we were like playing with them and stuff. Okay,
Sure.
at camp. But I caught a lizard that had like legit teeth. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it is. But it was like had scales all over it, and it was like spiky.
Was
and
it
it had teeth?
Spiky.
And
Wait,
he
was
was
it
a-
a yellow
Did you
spotted
catch a
lizard?
Stegosaurus?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
From the movie or book, Holes?
Yes, I did, and it bit me, and I died. No,
You
no.
just described a Stegosaurus.
And so, at any rate, I find it and I caught it, and it was probably 6 inches long. I mean, it was a pretty big lizard, like, and it was really fun to do that. But my favorite part of it was, I went around asking kids who wanted to buy it from me.
of course.
And one of the kids gave me $20 for that lizard, and I sold it to him, and got the money and everything. And Big Red was like, "Dude, you can't take $20 from a kid," you know. And I was like, "But he gave it to me. What? It's not fair. I want my lizard back." And he was like,
Of course
he doesn't
he
have the
ruined it.
lizard anymore. The lizard ran off, and I was like, "So I'm not
That's
even
his
gonna
fault.
get my lizard."
he should be
And
a
so-
better trapper keeper.
Yeah. So that was one of my good.
But now Big
memories.
Red's fun. He'd 100% let that happen.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. I
So
don't know. I don't know.
No, that's your fault.
He probably wouldn't let that happen.
Big Red and I, back when he was my teammate, in
He
the
was one of
cabin,
my favorite counselors.
we
He was
were
great.
we would counsel the cabin together, and we would get in there. And the first night, we'd say, "Hey, look, guys, listen. We're just gonna be straight honest with you. We're not looking for the cleanest cabin at this camp. We don't care if this place is immaculate. We're not the cleanest people, right?" He said, "But we don't want to be the one that's delayed going to lunch because our cabin wasn't clean. We don't want to be the one that Chris calls out during the awards time and makes fun of. We're just shooting for mediocrity this week in cleanliness. If you could
Middle of
meet
the
that
road.
goal, we're fine with that." So bringing back,
That
bringing
sounds
back,
like Big Red.
Bringing
Yeah, it's
back,
coming back.
cabin cleanup.
It is.
This week. So that's going to be a little pressure for my guys over at the lodge. So.
Well, one thing that I love about camp,
But the odds, is Cade Presnell actually going to walk all the way over to the lodge to check it? That's the question.
No. His wife will though. His wife.
Well, she's
will.
just doing the girl cabins.
Overachiever.
Oh well.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
in charge of the guy.
Yeah,
I don't
he
even
won't
think he
do it.
showers every day.
He's probably
much
just
less cleans his room.
He's probably just gonna sign off on it and be like, "Yeah, it's good."
Yeah, good enough.
So one thing that I love about camp is there's a lot of times where the adults get to team up with the students. And a lot of things that we get to do together, and we plan things together as far as camp goes, which segments into what we're talking about today, which is teaming up with our students. So what does that look like, Jeremy?
It looks like the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis that we are actively doing in ministry, helping our students see those things and to be an active participant alongside those things. One of those is here's an example. Coleman is one of our students. He is at the church building a lot of times on Mondays. His mom works in the church office, and so he'll be there at the building. And so what I've done this year is, like, when there's a retreat coming up, I've let him be a participant in the planning of things and like organizing and getting supplies together the week of a retreat, teaming up with him to understand, how things happen in youth ministry. Of course, he listens to our podcast and likes the idea of, thinking about what it means to do that kind of stuff. But it's more than just task preparation, teaming up with your students in engagement and relationship with other students, right? Letting them be an active part of that conversation. And one of the ways that we do that is you talk to the kids about, what things do you think that our group is struggling with right now? Have you ever asked that, with any of your students, said, right now, what do you think our group really needs? What kind of teaching do we need to be having? Teaming up with them, letting them have some conversation in that.
Well, and for me, there's different levels of, we're going to say so, or maybe involvement. I have my involvement group, my core leaders, and they have a lot more say-so on things that happen, or I listen to them a lot closer on what they want. But then there are also things that are kind of opened up to the entire youth group. you know, what do y'all want to do this summer? They can throw out ideas. That
Right.
doesn't mean those ideas are going to happen, but they can at least say what their ideas are.
Yeah.
If we want to have VBS coming up, you know, whatever that situation might be, camps coming up, you know, hey, what do you think would be a fun ball field devo? What do you think would be a fun activity to do while at camp or during free time, things on those lines? And they can have their say-so in it. It just depends for the youth minister on how much say-so you allow the students to have.
Yeah.
And a lot of times youth ministers try to be this one-man band, and they try and just do everything by themselves. And that's where we see a lot of burnout, and two, we see a lot of just repetitive stuff. So it's always important to get those teens involved to where they can kind of mix things up. And for me, it's, you know, at this point, I've gone through, there's a certain family at Flint, I've gone through 3 different siblings through the youth group.
Yeah.
You know, and what was fun for that first sibling, the oldest sibling, it isn't fun to do anymore for that youngest sibling.
Yeah.
And they don't like that event as much anymore. But thanks to them speaking up, you kind of get to see, you know, hey, you used to do this event, and it was a lot of fun, and now we just don't really enjoy that as much. How about we transition into doing this? Or we used to do, we used to do a ton of Nerf wars in like the very beginning of me getting to Flint, and then that was what everyone wanted to do. And then we went through like this 3 or 4 year span of like no one wanted to do it, and now we're starting to get back into it. And everybody's like, "Oh, what is our next Nerf war?"
It's the whole thing of. Do y'all remember the paintball days? Everybody wanted to play paintball.
Yeah.
But that was probably a little before Hunter. But
Yeah.
And we did it in when I was in high school.
Yeah. There was all about, and then all of a sudden it was just like nobody wanted to play paintball anymore.
Yeah, all the youth
ever
ministers
again.
kept shooting the kids.
We were discussing this
Duh.
the other day. My brother-in-law was sad because he's like, Lincoln will never know what it's like, the pain of getting shot with a paintball. I was like, we could shoot him. I mean, like, we
Line him
don't,
up.
just because we haven't played doesn't mean we can't shoot him. Hey, let me ask you this. You know, I have moments like this. This happened this last Sunday night. We were having our summer kickoff thing. Our interns arrived. Noah is here.
Shout out
finally.
Noah.
And
What about
and
that girl
And then
intern?
we've got a girl intern too. She's here. And then no, her name's Karis.
No,
I ruined it. Her name's Karis. She's awesome.
I call her Sherry.
And I will say we did have Sherry. Charis. We did have an awesome moment where
just
she.
call her Grace? Would she get upset about that?
I don't know. She told me it means grace. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, so those
Right.
that are not familiar with the Greek language, that is grace in
Yes.
Greek, and I think that's the coolest name because that's just so neat and unique.
yeah.
I'm gonna call her Grace.
Kind of like an
anyways.
inside joke.
Yeah.
Like
So-
like only certain people are gonna.
Yeah, I never
would
realized
call,
that.
I would call her Grace.
That's
what
awesome.
you should do.
I would-
I'm going to call her Sherry.
All right, I like
That's
that too. But she's doing a great job. But you know, to speak to what you said a minute ago about, you know, figuring out what works, what doesn't. You know, not trying to do everything like a one man band. Saturday night, I was getting some stuff ready for Maywood, and you know how it is. You're the rest of the year you're by yourself. You know, so you don't have interns to help you with things. Hunter doesn't know what that's like still,
Yeah, I
but. She was like, "Hey,
Maybe one day.
She's like, "Hey, you know, like you could give me a list and we could just do this for you, right?" I was like, "You're right. That's true. I need to get you involved." But we did have this moment Sunday night where
Not for you, with you.
right, that's what I meant. Right. So we had this couple of kids that came. They were visitors, friends of one of our other kids, Will, and they sat there. And I realized pretty quickly that this one girl, she's 10th grade, 10th or 11th. She's sitting by herself, right? And so I see her over there, and so I go over there and introduce myself, sit down. In just a minute, 2 of my other girls, Lauren and Macy, kind of wander their way over there. They come to tell me
Classic Lauren.
something. They come to tell me something.
Classic Macy.
And so I make eye contact with Macy, and she knows what I'm thinking because we've had these kind of moments happen. And that girl is like, look down at her phone or something. And I look at Macy, and I make the big eyes, and I look at the girl. I'm like, you know, doing back and forth. The eyes are shooting back and forth. And she's like, I got you. Like, she looks at me. And so she sits down and starts engaging this girl in conversation, which I know seems like such a silly little simple thing. But for a student to pick up on that, you know, hey, and then jump in. And I looked back maybe 30 minutes later, and she and Lauren and Macy and another girl are over there playing cornhole together, or they're, you know, shooting basketball. And like, she engaged this person. She may not have any idea that she's doing ministry in that moment, but in that little moment, they came over and they teamed up alongside me and made this girl feel welcome, right?
Yeah.
She'll for sure come back and visit again because of the way that she was received by girls, her own peers, her age. It was cool.
Yeah. One of my favorite character studies, by the way, is in is just the character of Timothy. I love the character of Timothy because I feel like I am a little bit like Timothy. I feel like, and this is not, this has nothing to do with Jeremy, okay? This has nothing to do with Jeremy.
Good.
But Paul and Timothy's relationship was a lot like mine and Jeremy's relationship. We started out, Jeremy was just my youth minister, and I didn't really care anything about him. And that's all he
Amen.
really was. He was just a youth minister guy.
It's weird how that hasn't changed.
And yeah, and as our relationship grew and stuff, I kind of relate here with Timothy because he gradually, him and Paul, still best friends. Think about one of the last things that Paul ever wrote was a letter to Timothy, and him saying, "Make sure to get my documents and stuff before I die," more or less. And he continues to have this friendship with him, even though there's a lot larger of an age gap between him and Timothy than me and Jeremy. And he always treats him as a peer. And I think that's just a really cool thing. And, in 1 Timothy 4:12, don't let anybody look down on you because you are young or because of your youth. I think that's huge because Paul recognizes that Timothy has worth. And back in that time, children weren't really treated that way.
Yeah. That, one of the things that's challenging in this in youth ministry, and I think we all battle with this at times, is treating kids as peers, respecting them as young adults and engaging them in moments of service and ministry while still maintaining an authority role in their life and them still seeing you as authority figure. And you're not just their bruh, but you're also their mentor, their leader, their minister. You're not just their friend, and so making sure you maintain that line of respect.
Making sure that they respect you as alpha.
As an alpha.
It's the alpha.
Not just as a bruh.
But also a sigma.
And so that, nice. So figuring out how you navigate that. And sometimes it's hard to do. And sometimes a kid doesn't get that, right? You make that friendship, and then later they kind of treat you as though you're like their home slice.
Oh no! Yeah, that's a good.
Well, and it's
hip term.
They're all saying that right now.
Home slice.
But you're also showing the congregation that they are important in the church. They're not the church of tomorrow. They're here right now and sitting in our building right here. How many of your kids are doing great things in front of the congregation? I have a kid that leads singing once a month in front of our congregation. Jeremy has a kid that was preaching not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. It's things like that we're showing everybody in the congregation how important these kids are, how much they mean to the church,
right, and
that they are needed in the church.
Yeah. I mean, I not long ago I preached, and that was one of my main topics. One of my main points was, hey, these are the stuff that our kids are doing, and I want to know, when was the last time you did something like this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are doing this every day. When was the last time you were challenged like this? And a lot of those people were like, we don't realize just how big of a deal our kids, or how big of a impact our kids are making in the schools and in the things that they're doing. And they all kind of came up and was like, thank you for making us think about that, challenging us that way.
One of the things that we talked about in our Discipling Through Prayer episode was, when a student asks you to pray for them, how do you navigate that and what do you do? And so I told you I set an alarm on my phone, and I get them to set an alarm too. And so that goes well. But I had a girl that recently, in the last few months, reached out to me, and she said, hey, I just wanted you to know I'm doing better in this situation. Things are going better. If you need to take me off the prayer alarm, for that time, like I can't pray for her anymore. And she said, but here's what was cool. She said, but if there's someone else that you need me to be praying for, let me know what time to set my alarm for, which is really cool, right? Because now, having these moments, have you had those kind of moments where you're inviting your students into a prayer ministry about another student? I know we have to be careful with confidentiality if they're going through something hard or whatever, but what's a moment where you've kind of invited your students to join you in a prayer challenge, to offer prayers for someone else?
We've done that with like little challenges throughout the summer where I tell everybody we're going to pray for these same things, and then we update that list. I think I've only ever done that one time. But then we also had, when I was an intern, one of my favorite things, it worked for this group. And it was one of those things where it doesn't work for everybody, because I've tried it at different places. Sure. Doesn't work. But at this church, it worked. But we called them dude meetings. Mm-hmm. And we just got together. I literally would cook like 5 pounds of bacon and we would drink hot black coffee. You couldn't put creamer in it. And that's what we would do. And we all just kind of sat around and we just talked about like our lives.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we would go through and have, hey, what can I pray for you? You know, and we'd go around the room and we would say a prayer for everybody. And it was really cool because we had dude meetings. And then we also, once we started the dude meetings, the girls were like, well, we want to have a meeting too. And so we did girl meetings.
Chick meetings.
I didn't know what to call them because they were like, we don't like chick. And so I just said, okay, what do you want? They sounded just like that too. But no, they were like, we don't like chick. So that we just called them girl meetings. Mm-hmm. And they started doing it. And what was really cool was the girls in the youth group were the ones that led that meeting. And because I was by myself, I was the only, I was the only intern, the only youth ministry person there. And eventually I found one of the college girls who had just graduated, and I got her in with them too to kind of be their leader. And it went so well. And I loved hearing about like the fruit that came from that. So.
Yeah. And what both of y'all are saying, and this is this shift in this mindset, you're going from what can I do for these students to what can God do through these students. And I think that's I might say this wrong, that might be the maturity level of youth ministers.
Yeah.
Is when you first start it, you're so focused on you and what can you do for the people around you, what can you do for your students. And then as you continue in your youth ministries, you continue to grow spiritually, as you continue to grow just in ministry in general, you start to realize that these students are more powerful and can reach more than just you can, and how you can utilize them. There's a clip on Instagram, and I saved it on my Instagram, and it talks about this youth minister talking about one of his kids. The kid's name was like Tyler. He said Tyler always showed up. He was always disruptive. He said to the point where he was praying that Tyler would just stop showing up to church. Because if he was there and they were praying, Tyler's talking. If he was singing, Tyler's distracting. And whatever that is, and he talks about this time of him giving Tyler this identity. That they had this big event at their church. He gave him a walkie-talkie, and he's now like, whatever the title of it was. Yeah. He said, but for the first time, Tyler heard me preach, and he obeyed the gospel. And he said what he didn't know is Tyler was the most popular kid at the biggest school at his group. He said, so Tyler went out and started evangelizing to thousands. Yeah. And that group grew. Yeah. And it's you realizing that you can do things on your own. You can do the silly, and especially with interns, from me experiencing with y'all, not because I don't have any, but seeing that is you can sit there and you can do everything yourself, or you can allow these kids to do some things, get some identity, and also grow that way as well. Yeah. To just see God work through them.
I actually had this question. I said, what are you doing in your life right now that's making an impact in the world for God? This was about 2 weeks ago. I had a little girl. She said, I have an Instagram, and I had a lot of followers. And she said, I just have a bunch of people that I follow, and they follow me back. And she was like, I'm talking like a lot of followers. And she said that she was praying one night, was like, what do I need to do? And she said she felt called to start just posting Bible verses and Bible topics and things that are on her mind about the Bible. This girl is in 8th grade, by the way. Cool. And she did. And she said, my page has like quadrupled in size. Yeah. People are sharing all of the things that I'm posting. And they're, and she said, especially in our school, people are reading the things that I'm writing and doing. And she was really excited about that. And I thought that was really cool because it all kind of stemmed from a lesson that was taught that I didn't even know, it was just one of those things that we kind of teamed up without.
Can you give that page a shout out?
I can, but I don't know it right off the top of my head.
Notes we'll have it in the description.
Yeah.
Because that is neat. I like that.
It's
using,
cool.
We've been talking about that in our Wednesday night class, using your talents for God, or using your gifts for God, and finding what you're passionate about and utilizing it.
So, I think getting kids to help with service projects, any way that they can serve your youth ministry and they're excited about it, especially with younger kids, like Vacation Bible School. We used to do some really fun stuff with the kids with Vacation Bible School or any of that stuff. I think that's huge. So
I'll tell you one that we did. This was kind of a teaming with our students. We had about 4 years ago, we had 2 girls that went to Uplift Camp, or maybe 5 years ago. And they were the only 2 that signed up to go, right? And so, obviously, I'm not going to go just me and 2 girls.
I was there.
And so, you got to see 2 of my girls there at Uplift.
Shout out to Sage.
And Maddie. And so, what I did for the week is I gave them access to the youth group Instagram. And I said, I want you to blow up Instagram this week with stuff about Uplift Camp and like the stuff that you saw, things that you experienced, and make it awesome, you know. And they did for a whole week. Like they posted stuff all, and I would say I credit these two girls for. I mean, next week we're taking like 25 people, or in a few weeks, like 20, 25 people to Uplift, because I think that they started a spark of something with that. And so, you know, just that little thing of allowing them to run a little bit of social media for a week, right?
Yeah.
After it was over, I was like, I changed the password, took it back. but letting them kind of lead something with that and partnering with them and trusting them too, you know. And of course I told them, I was like, hey, you know, don't get me fired. Like, don't post something that's going to get me in trouble. But make sure, you know, you're posting encouraging things. And they felt empowered to do that, right?
Yeah.
Letting them know that I trust you to impact others in this ministry.
And, you know, in this teaming up thing, it's important for us to understand and recognize that these are children. You know, these are kids. So you're not going to expect just a top tier, high quality thing every single time out of them, just like you wouldn't with an adult.
Or when you were that age, you wouldn't have had
especially when I was that age. Good grief. So, but it's important just to know your students are not going to be super Bible savvy and they're going to know all the answers to everything and they're going to know everything. But it's important for us to teach them and show them passion, creativity, bravery. You know, give them some form of control over something, because students, they don't know any better. Like what we were talking about, they don't know any better, and they will try things that adults aren't going to try.
Yeah.
And
they're willing to lead in ways that
and putting themselves out there, you know, and adults are not willing to do that. I call it not being too cool for things.
Yes.
That's what I call it. I tell our students all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've told my youth group, hey, stop being too cool for this.
Yeah.
You are not too cool for this. You are in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You know, you might think that you are, but you're not. This is like literally what 8th graders like to do. They like doing this stuff. Every other kid in here is watching you, and the only reason they're not doing it is because they think you're going to make fun of them. Yeah. So let's stop doing that. Let's you know, you're not too cool for this.
So we're going to try to draw our students into being an active part, working alongside. Let's talk about how we empower our students to be leaders in our group. How do we help them do that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things I think that we start with is, and this is something Steve says all the time, what makes your heart beat faster? Is the way he words it from sermons.
I like that.
He says, you know, when you think about what makes you get fired up about something with God, what God is at work doing. And so ask your kids, like, man, what is a passion to you? What do you care about? What's important to you? What would you have a serious interest in serving in?
Yeah. One of the things that, too, you know, with that conversation, I tell them, and this came from when I played basketball. I remember my senior year, my coach took me to the side and he said, hey, Michael, last year, you know, the year before that, we won 1 game or 2 games, I think, the whole season.
Yeah.
I didn't get to play. That's probably why we didn't win.
Obviously.
But really, he took me to the side and he said, hey, Michael, I need you to step up and I need you to score points. When you have a shot, I don't want you to pass it. I want you to take the shot. When you have an opportunity to drive it to the goal, I want you to drive it to the goal and score. I don't want you to do, you know, I don't want you to do, and him just saying, hey, Michael, I recognize that you have value and that you have something to offer this team, and this is it, and I need you for this. But in that conversation that you were just talking about, saying that to our students, saying, I believe you have what it takes to be a leader in this youth group because of the way that you interact with our kids. People love being around you, and you can make a huge difference for God.
We had this moment happen on the basketball court this year with Lincoln's little 5th grade team. Our no offense to my son, but he was not the number 1 player on our team.
But he was number 1 in our hearts.
Number 1 in our heart.
By far.
But our best shooter was going to be out for the game. He wasn't going to be there. And so I was coaching these boys, and I got there on the side. I said, hey, look, this kid's not here to make all the points. Like, if you have a shot, I want you to shoot it. Even if
shoot your shot.
Know, like we're not going to win this game if you're banking on that kid making a shot, because he's not here today. And so I said, you've got the green light. If you're open, shoot. Okay. Now I should have said if you're open within a reasonable range, shoot. But they heard if you're open, shoot. So this one kid, Jace, man, he threw up some Hail Marys.
I love that.
But here's the thing, and the whole season he had not been shooting outside or taking shots. Even when he was open, he would look for a pass, and he started pulling that trigger and shooting, right? And so at the end of the game, he had 6 points, right? That he normally
Roll Tide.
wouldn't have pulled. Now he missed some bad air balls, okay, but it enabled him. And the thing is too, he failed, but he failed and kept moving ahead.
That's right.
Yeah. That's one of the things that when you enable students, they're kids, they're students. When you enable them to lead in some way, something may not work perfectly.
Yeah.
Well,
and how do you help them with that? Go ahead.
It's offering ownership. The youth group, they get involved when they feel like there's ownership there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways you can do that. You're just inviting them to participate in just some answer or Q&As that you're wanting, or give them ideas. Allow them to design a shirt. Allow them to help out kind of with maybe a retreat theme that you have, or maybe just planning the retreat, some fun things that you want to do. We created FIG, which is our youth group mascot, and it's just FYG, FIG, so Flint Youth Group. And but he's literally just our arrowhead with some cartoon eyes, cartoon arms, and cartoon legs. But even just creating him gave that youth group so much ownership in that room, and hanging them in the youth room, you just felt like there was more ownership there. And it's just finding ways to allow them to have ownership, allow them to really dive into your youth group instead of just having these chores or these small things that you want them to do.
One of the things that I've recognized in this idea here of letting them fail and helping them through the failure and everything is to always celebrate them and affirm them. Okay. And what's really important in this is that when we affirm them, we're not lying to them. Okay. When they do something, and whenever a kid gets up and he leads a song and he stutters through because he didn't get the right words or whatever, he comes back and he sits down and he's embarrassed. Yeah. I don't tell him, dude, you did great. That was wonderful. And I'm proud of you and all that stuff. I tell him, hey, I'm proud of you for getting up there. And next time let's work on getting, doing it the right way. But because they know what they did was good. They know that what they did was what they were supposed to do, but they messed it up. And they're embarrassed about that, and lying to them and saying, we didn't even notice. Nobody ever noticed. That's not doing them any favors, really.
Well, the other thing you can add to that is, we had this happen with Roman the other day. He led a song, and
what a man
he is, and he led a song for one of our Laz leaders, things like that, and he did great. And what I went to Roman, was he the best of our whole night? No, a couple of the guys did really, really good, right? Yeah, Roman did great. But I went over to Roman and I said, hey, man, that was so much better than the last time you led.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't say you're perfect, you've got it all right, you're the best you've ever done. But I also didn't say, hey, that kind of stunk too. He knows what things he might do better the next time. But to say, I've seen growth in you since the last time I saw you do that. Yeah. That's an affirming moment.
Yeah. Right? You said it a lot better than I did. That's what I was trying to say, but I wasn't saying it the right way. Yeah.
Well, you're training and equipping them. You're whatever Roman did, let's say he messed up in this one part, you're sitting there and you're helping him out in that situation. We're not, and I don't want people that are listening to think that we're just crazy and let the kids do whatever they want.
No.
There is a fine-tooth comb that we are following behind and making sure that everything fits, but we're also training them and equipping them for these situations. Allowing them to fail a little bit, not in a drastic way, but allowing them to see that, hey, I can't do it this way. This way is not going to work. I need to make sure I'm doing it the right way.
Right.
This is the model that we see Jesus employ. We see Jesus do miracle things, right? And then we see Jesus call his disciples to be participants alongside that miraculous thing. And then we see Jesus say, now you are leading these people, right? You take the charge. Not just throwing them out there and hoping they don't fail, but model and mentor, like you just said. That's a Jesus model of teaching.
Just think about walking on the water. Jesus comes up, walking on the water. He calls out. Peter walks up. He doesn't just, as soon as he sees Peter falling, he doesn't just reach out and grab him. He waits, lets him fall. And he says, hey, don't you see that I'm dying over here? And then he's like, okay, oh, you have little faith, and helps him up. And so it's important that we recognize that, because as someone who, when people tell me I'm doing a good job, I'm like, okay, I don't need to change anything. I'm good. And that's not the case. I need to be better. And so I remember as a student, as a kid, kind of in our youth group, I was one of the kids that was like a leader in our youth group. and I felt so great about myself. And then once I got to Freed Hardeman, I realized I'm not very good at this. And it took a lot for me to accept that and recognize that, because I had been lied to, not in a bad way or an evil way or anything like that, but because people weren't being truthful to me.
Well, when summing all this up, it's student leadership. We're talking about them growing and them failing for them, and us being there for them. And what we're really focusing on is it's not perfection. We're not here looking for perfect students. We're not here looking for what we said earlier. We're not looking for theologians. They're not going to be the smartest. They're not going to be the best. They're not going to be whatever. But we're looking for direction. We're looking to make sure that they're always facing God every single day, that they're always stepping towards God every single day, and that they're always growing towards God every single day.
Yeah. And it's important, when we do team up with students, finding those things and recognizing the worth that they have in those areas. And sometimes we get a little nervous when we start including kids. I mean, I'm very guilty of this, especially with things that we really feel like are going to make a big difference, or that we really want to take advantage of this time, and thinking that our students are, aren't able to do it. I don't know how to.
Immature.
Yeah, maybe.
Not ready, maybe.
Yeah. Immature, not ready, and it's hard to trust them and let them fail in situations like that.
Yeah.
Well, and not knowing how they're going to react to the failure. We talked about failing forward, and Jeremy tells a story, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of his students prayed for the first time not too long ago, and he didn't know how to end the prayer. And he said, all right, we're done. Or something along those lines. Like,
that's
that's it.
That's his translation of amen.
But isn't that a great failing forward moment, though?
Yeah.
Because he did something so great. He stepped out of his comfort zone. He prayed in front of everybody. And let's say that it was it's not a fail. He prayed in front of people, but he didn't know how to end it. To him, that might be a failure, but he's failing forward. He's doing something still to step up and be this leader in this youth group. Even though it didn't go exactly how he wanted it to, it was still a positive thing.
Yeah.
What was cool when that happened is one of the other boys, a couple of kids laughed. Kids are kids, right?
Yeah.
A couple of kids laughed when he did that. But one of the boys kind of afterwards said, hey, man, I know that kind of felt weird at the end. This is how I typically end my prayers.
Yeah.
Right? And had this discipling moment.
Yeah.
I think as youth ministers, we sometimes avoid partnering with our students and teaming up and giving them student leadership roles and letting them have that kind of reins, because we're afraid of some of these things we just mentioned, that they're not ready yet. They might say or do something wrong. They might do something that we are embarrassed that came from our youth ministry. Or this is a sad one, and sometimes it is just easier to do stuff ourselves than to try to incorporate the kids into it. And I would counter that with this, okay? Jesus sent his disciples before they were perfect. They were imperfect people. He called them as imperfect people and sent them out to do.
And just so y'all know, God has called us as imperfect people.
Yes.
Too. So it might not be easier to do it yourself because you're imperfect just like they are.
Okay. They might say something wrong. Well, when we make a mistake, when we screw something up, when we ourselves mess up, that helps us grow in some way. It leads to deeper growth. And then it's easier just to get these tasks done by myself. Ministry is really not about efficiency. I know we talked about that before, efficiency or effectiveness. It's not just about efficiency. It's about relational ministry, about work with people, building, growing their hearts closer to Christ. And that may not be the most efficient thing, but it's work that matters.
Yeah.
So,
so to kind of close out what we've been talking about, sorry. To kind of close out everything that we're talking about, it's important that we reflect on what Jeremy just said, okay? To think about how God handled his kingdom when he passed the kingdom on to us. Yes. When Jesus decided, or when Jesus was resurrected, he was raised up into heaven, and he left the kingdom to imperfect people.
Some young.
Some very young, and left it to them to do what he needed them to do.
Yeah.
And I think that we should follow that. in a lot of different situations, a lot of different areas.
And we're sitting here 2,000 plus years later talking about how to minister because those young people did what Christ left them to do.
That's right.
And wasn't perfect every time, but they did what Christ left them
And
to
these
do.
people were not theologians. They didn't have a Bible degree.
They were
They
fishermen.
didn't have ministry degrees. They were just your regular, normal people doing their regular, normal things when they were called. And so youth ministers, deacons, elders, whoever's listening to the show, it's important to look around and find some students this week even and invite them into something deeper. Invite them to participate in your worship service or in a ministry service or some form of service to God, to the church, to help grow, not just to help the church, but to help them understand their worth, to help them understand exactly what they're able to do. So,
Yeah.
And that's the challenge for this week. Find that one person, reach out to them, and start to mentor them, start to, like Michael said, invite them into something deeper.
yeah. Don't just plan the next event. Plan your next partner for the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask. I want to do something, and I'm catching y'all with the curveball here. Can we close out with a moment of prayer for our listeners, their students, and just the ministry that they're doing as they partner with their students?
Yeah.
All right. God, we thank you for the opportunity to talk to the hearts of those who minister to the youth. God, I ask that you would just help us as we try to incorporate these things in our own ministries at Flint and at Hartselle and Coleman, but also as our listeners try to incorporate these things with their students. God, I ask that you would just bless us to have the faith that you will work in and through our students, that they can do incredible things for your kingdom, and help us to entrust those roles into their hands. God, help us to mentor and guide them as we call them into service, into being our teammates in ministry to their peers. And God, I ask that you would just bless these students with a life that desires to know your kingdom and to make it known to others. And we pray all of it through Christ's name. Amen.
Thanks for joining us today in the important conversation of youth ministry. Go and follow us on Instagram and check out oksyouthministry.com for more information about our upcoming episodes. We'll be dropping a new episode every Wednesday morning, and we look forward to talking with you again next week. And hey, it's okay to be the OKS youth minister around, but let's all strive to be just a little bit better.